the other boats that we saw, there's a measurement on here, I think it's 205 millimeters for your side decks. A lot of them were starting out there and then becoming a little bit narrower straight away. And it just, from my little bit of time sitting in the boat as well, demoing them, it just felt like you wanted something a little bit bigger to sit on there, be a little bit more comfortable. One of the existing boats, it also flared up a little bit here, which made it, in my mind, when you actually sat in that area, all it made you do is feel like you're going to fall out of the boat the whole time. Whereas it was actually a lot more comfortable to be able to just sitting in something and not feel like you're going to fall out backwards the entire time. We lowered the cockpit floor, which what we felt was as much as we could. There was a little bit of skepticism that water would start coming in the back. In hindsight, I probably would have gone lower again, because I think the lower floor, any water coming in the back, kids are all here. It tells you what?
You're sitting too far back.
Sitting too far back. There's water coming in the back of the boat. It's a pretty good indicator that you're too far back, so it makes you move forward. So we could have gone lower, but the lowerness of the floor was just to try and help the skipper and crew sitting on the side, getting their feet lower in the boat, feeling a little more comfortable rather than sitting there with your ankles up around your shoulders, basically. We went to Centerline hiking strap. My young boy Joel's only 10, relatively short for a flying ant sailor, and that strap, I believe, is still plenty fine for him. I see a lot of kids struggling with the double strap out there, trying to actually get their foot on the windward side, and again their knees are up around their shoulders. If you're still like that and having that problem, I suggest for now at least use the leeward strap. It'll make it a lot more comfortable. Angled floor jib tracks, so we came to putting the jib tracks onto the floor of the boat, mainly to clean it all up, and also it enables you to have, with the fixed rake and everything that we've got, and once you get it all set up with your jib profiles, just the in and out is a nice thing. You see that on most modern yachts now, that they're shooting further and further inboard all the time, giving you more height, at the same time as moving the track inboard. It goes forward, which powers the jib up, so it does everything for you that a new modern big boat would do with a hydraulic fancy system, with just a simple slide system here. It also gives, in my mind, you haven't got a lot of, we've eliminated a lot of the controls and fine tuning of the boats, but it still gives the kids something to have to think about and what can they do to actually to get a little bit better performance out of the boat. The spin pole, again, was part of the bulkhead thinking. Went back and forth about whether to have it centre line or off to the side. I think a lot of boats have had it built into their existing boats to the side because it's just easier to begin with structurally. We've brought it up as high as we could to try and make it look like it's not there when it's not in use, and we've kept, there's been one or two boats that we've played around with before with this rake in the boats and putting the asymmetric spinnakers on them on a boat that had a very horizontal pole. Once it was pulled out, basically the spinnaker didn't fit. It was basically became a tight luff spinnaker, and hence we've just got a slight up as the pole comes out, which also enables the receiving tube in the boat to go back into that bulkhead tie in, and this is a carbon tube inside the boat which just adds strength structurally whenever you put rig tension onto the boat. As I said, a lot of the controls we went, I've got bucket loads of old fittings if anyone needs old fittings, because we've ripped plenty of them off with boom vane controls and everything coming everywhere. I tried to eliminate as much as we could out of the boat, so it was just more about the kids playing around with jib sheets, spinnaker sheets, main sheets, and learning how to sail a fun little exciting boat. As we all saw the last 2 days ago, there's plenty going on. You've got enough to think about, let alone trying to fine tune all of that. Part of that has also been possible because of new modern technologies with the carbon rigs, the stiffer sailcloths, modern designs in the sails, flatter sails. You don't have to try and manipulate the sails as much as you used to with a rig. So the masts are very straight when they're rigged up in the boat without the spreaders. I'll get to that a little bit more, but the control systems is basically laser style boom bang, just on, off. You know, a little adjustment at the top mark every now and then if you have to, but for the most kids, and especially kids that would be learning in this boat for their first times, we can very easily set this boat up when they leave the beach. We've set and forget everything, and all they have to worry about is main sheet, jib sheet and spinnaker sheet if they choose. Cunningham on the mast again to eliminate fittings on the boat. It also keeps the cost down as much as we can for manufacturing. Don't have to have people in the sheds spending so much time trying to put fittings on here, there and everywhere. We do gone to a little, oh, this one actually doesn't have it. This was the very beginning of it. It's basically just a knot for an outboard, set and forget, which you can easily do, but we have gone to just a simple cleat and internal pulley on the what will be the future. This is all a bit of a different procedures. As I said, gone to flatter sails. Just feel there's a lot of sails out there that are very draggy in any bit of breeze. So as you see in a lot of skiffs, 18 footers, 16s, everything, all the way through to TP52s and all of that, everything's just become low drag sails, so flatter you can. Quick bit about the sail is just the square top main to try and make it look, again, give it the aesthetics of a newer look. You don't notice it, but there's been a lot of back and forth and recutting and changing done to give it that simple, clean look that we possibly can. So as you see in the jib, it's not quite set up right there yet, but it's when you see it on the water, the what's called the hojo and the jib lines up perfectly with the battens. The fixed forestay length allows the battens to all look horizontal and not a little bit out of cue. This is me being a little bit too fine detailed and critical of things, but I'm trying to make everything look as simple, clean as you possibly can. You know, battens lining up with where the spinnaker, how your exit block is, the hojo on the mainsail being hidden underneath the battens, things like that, just to clean that up as much as we could. Again, the fixed forestay just enables all that to stay like that all the time. If you're changing your rake all the time, well, the next minute everything goes out of kilter and you go to take the nice picture of it. Anyway, carrying on a bit too much there. What I said, the mast, as I said, we're going to the carbon two-piece mast, spreaderless. The whole initial thought was how do we get something that's just quick and easy and you can throw it away, so handling wise and transporting and things like that. So the mast is designed with the split in the mast to make both ends the same length, so when you pack it all into a bag with your boom, sails, tiller extensions, whichever, throws into a bag and can fit inside the cockpit and up inside the spinnaker. Just has to tuck inside the spinnaker chute outlet a little bit just to do that, which will then enable, when we get to it, just a full deck cover that you just throw over the boat and it's a complete package done. That's most of it there. We're proposing, I know it looks a bit, well, some kids, we've sort of gone back and forth and asked the kids about colours and things and sails and all of that, and sort of the consensus to begin with is quite stealth looking, becomes more modern looking. Whether that's where it ends up or not, but what we're planning to do is get PDF files made online, so then there's a couple of companies that are doing boat wraps now, so you'll have a sticker area here that'll just be basically the whole top side there, that the kids can go online, play with whatever they want to print up on that, get that printed out, bang it on, customise your boat, put a bit of flavour and colour to it like that. We're looking to have some sort of big flying ant logo on the foredeck there to just give a bit to it, and also I'm hoping, and we're slack on it here, we wanted to get our own pennant onto here, but get the kids and encourage them to actually start putting some sort of logos on their sails so it's a little more colourful and identifiable on the water. The other one that sort of you've heard a little bit about, and you can see, although it's battery's flat and it's about to run out, is we're experimented with the kids using a GPS speedo of some sort in the boat, and it's become very effective for the kids' confidence and learning and sailing the boats, and giving them that little incentive to get out there and have a go a bit more in a bit of breeze and try and set new speed records, PBs, all those things that a lot of other sports are already doing now. And I've had chats with companies like Strava, who are a big cycling running company, and hopefully in the next year they're going to get on board with more of a Strava for sailing that's going to allow this type of thing, and you can start setting amongst yourselves as kids speed challenges around the state, around the world, whatever it might be, hoping other classes will also embrace it. The beauty of it that I see, and having done Opti coaching and trying to convince sometimes kids that they're sailing a little bit too high and slow, and they come in, they say, no, I'm not, I'm going fast enough all day long. And you can't really convince them until you put a speedo on their boat and they actually start seeing how they're going versus someone else with another speedo. And the thinking there is also that all these kids, and as we, in the sailing that I do, you know, in bigger boats, and also even in filtering down to, you know, Melges 32s and things like that, they're all going to end up steering off a speedo anyway, so why not embrace it? It helps the kids actually learn the techniques. You can make up for a boat a very simple little target sheet that'll show them upwind, trapezing, you should be doing somewhere between 5 to 7 knots, not sitting there going 3 knots or going 9 knots. And like I said, we've had opportunities with our kids out sailing in a good breeze, first time downwind in a big breeze, and they had the speedo on. I could see them getting a little bit fearful, and how do you handle the situation as a coach? Came in and asked them what speed are they doing, and they said, oh, about 12 knots, and I said, ease the spinnaker a bit and I bet you can do 14, no problem at all. They did it, they took off, and the smiles came on their faces and their confidence went through the roof rather than a capsized wipeout. This is not possible. So that's just the thinking behind that. The boats, we've chosen PSA, which is the laser builders basically of Australia, Performance Sailcraft Australia, to build the moulds with me overseeing them at the same time, with the idea that they can, if the class continues to grow and we can get new boats on the water and clubs and whoever wants to start looking at buying these boats, if it comes to being able to build a bunch of boats that, you know, quick process, we can do that. Hence the mast has been, you know, 1 or 2 prototypes done there. We're very happy that this mast goes through a huge weight range for the kids. It'll withstand that. It's had plenty of time in the mud out here, and it's withstood all that, so it's been a good test for all of that. I've gone out with my young fella and hung off the wire in good breeze and given it everything that I could, and it's still standing, so happy with that. And it's still doing enough in the light air to bend in the right places and doing that. So that seems to have ticked some boxes there, which will then become part of the whole package that will become available hopefully over this year. Can't add too much more. Other than that, if there's any questions or queries or anything, good time now to just sum it up. Going to be here for a little while.
And can I ask you to explain a little bit more about the jib? So how does the jib here differ to the regular boats? What was your thinking behind?
Well, as I said, the initial thinking is just rigging a boat up at home in the boat park and looking at it, and, you know, looking at the modern day 18 footers and just looking at the rake and going, that just looks 1950s. Everything now is, you know, swept back, all of that. I could see where it was coming from with the, you know, just how the boat was originally designed. It was designed with quite an allowable, it allowed quite a big mainsail and quite a, you know, relatively small jib. So hence, to balance the boats up, they were putting the mast forward because of this big overpowering mainsail. How can I get that rake in the boat and give it that modern look? I started just playing with that and started just taping up the bottom of the jib and going, that's where it's going to have to be to give it that look. And you just started going, well, it's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So, and the rake side of it to me is coming from having sailed the boats, watching the boats sail. And yesterday was a good example. You know, it was one of the first times with this rake in the lighter air that the boats have raced against the other boats. And it, you know, happily for me and for where it's come from, it performed just fine with that. You know, I thought that's going to be its only downside, mainly because of the weight of the rig, which I look at is just, it's, you know, it forces kids to have to get further forward in the lighter airs if the mast is further back and putting more weight on the transom basically. So it did that, but then anything over 12 knots of breeze, every time I watch the kids, you know, especially downwind or and even upwind, and myself, when I get out on the boat in a bit of breeze on the wire, upwind, you know, my front foot trapezing is back here to keep that bow there, and I just sort of go, well, unless you're a, you know, the combination where you're a bigger skipper at the back and a small crew, that sort of does it by itself. But if you're the other way around with a, you know, and it's another just can of worms in the sport that you'll see unfold with a single trapezing boat. You're always looking for a big tall crew and a tiny little skipper because you want all the weight out there. So once you get to that, it's with a smaller skipper sitting in the back, you need to everything in the breeze is stepping further back, and it just seemed to be performing better and better every time we did it. And also it just again gave it that downwind in the real fresh stuff and waves. The bow it just helped keep the bow up. The spinnaker projection helped keep the bow up. So
Adam, the jib you're using in the regatta, do you know how much smaller in area it is than the maximum allowable?
I think I do have that or Craig could easily do that calculation. I know the this jib was initially a little bit higher, about another 100 mil higher, which is what we were first sort of trying to go. That gives it a really nice look and helps, you know, the balance with the rake and everything like that. For a lot of you probably don't know, but the booms, I forget exact measurements, but it's again like 100, 150 mil shorter here than what you're allowed. Those bottom two battens are all at least 150 millimeters shorter there, so we've straightened the leech on the mainsail up to help balance it, to help give it a higher aspect look. In doing so, also a little bit of the thinking with the sailmaker behind it is it just makes, again, the sail way more controllable, because the rounder you have this, when the breeze fills, the more it's going to be trying to twist that open, and the more boom vang you're going to have to try and pull on to counteract that. Whereas the straighter you get that, you just have to pull a tiny bit of boom vang on and your leech sits where you want it to sit rather than hanging out of the boat and depowering you when you're at a critical stage to wanting to power it up. But getting back to the jib side of it, that was where it all came from, was basically started with wanting to make it look a little faster looking, modern looking, give it a, you know, point of interest with a slightly better rake. And to do that, then it just, you know, one thing led to another to going, well, to do that we're going to have to do this, to do that, and we're going to end up with this tiny little jib. And I just felt strongly that the rake and the aesthetics is a big, you know, it pleases the kids. As we asked a few of the kids, you know, showed them a few pictures and go, you know, which boat do you like the look of? And they're all just pointing at that going, that looks like a skiff, and you put that square top on the top, and that's where it's sort of initiated from. And as I've said yesterday, and a lot of it, it's, you know, I haven't used a lot of kids because I don't want to, you know, lean on too many of the kids around the world. I'm not sure how you go about that, but the majority have all been on the same thinking, you know, and that's where it's initiated from. And a lot of the other thinking has come from the same thing as asking the kids, go, what do you want? What do you want to see? What would you want to sail? What's appealing? And that's what's come about it. And also just the fact of the actual ant itself. You know, you ask them about other boats and they have a look and you go, which one do you choose out of all those boats? And it actually started with us at a yardstick regatta at Wangi probably 3 or 4 years ago, sitting in a powerboat, watching a bunch of youth boats coming at us of variety, different sizes, single-handed, double-handed, coming into a jibe mark. And For all I know, it might have even been on fire at the time before we even knew about it. And they came in and I asked the kids, which boat out of all those coming down here do you like? And they all pointed to the one with the red spinnaker with the kid on trapeze. It was like, well, that's there's your answer right there. That's what the kids want to sail. Let's try and provide something that's an easy, simple package for parents, you know, that are time constrained now, that can now hopefully come and get involved with and help it grow, and the kids can be excited by it. That's the thinking there. And to go way back, it was a very similar story for me when I was a young kid, and my dad showed me just a picture book of a whole bunch of classes in Australia. He said, which one of them do you choose? And I chose the flying ant, just because of the same thing. It was at the time the fastest looking thing that I saw out of all the other options.
Adam, just for the kids' perspective, a lot of boats are putting GoPros on their boats to whatever. It'd be I reckon it'd be a nice little addition to have a little GoPro mounting bracket off the stern of the
Yeah,
boat.
well, as I said, like my future looking at it is, and you know, I could go on forever and I don't want to, but you know, all kids are going to end up with waterproof iPhones. There's apps out now, I've already downloaded and used them on the boat that do all the speed things for you. You know, you can look into getting a mount in the appropriate spot, that you can voice activate cameras to switch on and off while you're racing, doing maneuvers, and I totally agree with all of that. I've already had a chat with Phil about, you know, ideally we need to do more little clips similar to this, but with the kids and the, you know, kids that are experienced and have learned, and also, you know, for me and others as a coaching point to actually show the techniques from the very beginning. So when a kid comes into a crew in a flying ant for the very first time, they can go onto YouTube, look at a couple of clips of how a kid hooks up, have interviews with those kids once they've worked out what roles they have to play on the boat, what they're responsible for. So it eases that pathway for a kid to come in that's only ever skippered a boat to now really wants to crew a boat. We've got a few kids here that I know are going from skippering to crewing. That's a massive appealing thing, as I said, with these boats. Every kid wants to hang out and trapeze. I've even thought about, you know, do you have weight brackets? Do you allow double trapeze if the kids want to do that? But that's just a whole nother complicated can of worms that this boat doesn't need for this age group. And I believe this critical age group for these kids is, you know, that 10 to 15, 16-year-old kids. They can have a lot of fun with this boat. But as far as the camera side of things, the technology side of things, I think we all know we're just only at the very, very bottom of that. There's a huge avenue out there to do it. And it's another thing that what I like the idea of is, let's get the kids to tell us what they want, how to do it, and let's get them to start actually doing it. Let's get them putting the GoPro and being responsible for putting the footage on file and editing it and putting it online and doing all that. They're way more capable than I am of it, so let's let them start doing it. Let them fly the drones around and do all of that sort of stuff. But that'll all come out as things progress, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of you may not even know, you know, other classes are doing it. I'm coaching NACRAs at the moment, and I go out there, they give me a set of headsets. I'm listening to them wired up the whole time while they're sailing, listening to their communication, you know, pointing little tips in there, you know, shouldn't be thinking about that, need to be thinking about this, where all those things. And that's that fantastic technology. And, you know, the same with, like you're saying, with new kids on this, we will get to a stage where, like kite surfing does and stuff, the instructors will, you know, have a helmet or a microphone on, the kids will have earpieces in of some sort. So in the situation, you're not in a boat yelling at the kids, you're just talking in their ear going, hey, take a deep breath, you need to just, you know, just bear away, do this, and it just calms and will ease that pathway and for a better future, I believe. But I'll finish up there with that unless there's any other questions or anything on the boat side of things. I said our plan with this is to have this a bit more of a plug and play online addition to the Flying Ant, so that it allows people to do that during this year and into the future. And how that unfolds is just going to take its own course, basically. We just have to see, but that's the initial plan with myself and PSA, is to have a website. If any of you want to go onto PSA now, you can see it on the laser 29er style of things. You go in, there's just numbers, click, 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 need a new rudder, all of that, and that's what we want a lot of it to be about. And again, I just finished with the driving force is I just want to see the boats or the kids have a very simple boat that they can go out and start enjoying, whether they're putting spinnakers up to begin with or not, but also then having, you know, future video clips that are just teaching and easing that initiation into the boats, which they suddenly, you know, a year later, they're through the roof. And it's, you know, it's been great for us to see, you know, two Opti kids that have never sailed, you know, a double-handed skiff type boat before, you know, struggle and getting on top of it. And I think it's great for all these kids to see, you know, that and how it can be done, and seeing other kids that it's capable, and it's just lifting all of their experiences, which is what it's all about to me, is just getting you all sort of enjoying it and the camaraderie that the, you know, the kids can get from it, and we'll try our best to keep doing that. Is there any more questions? Is there any questions on the boat or anything? That's good.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks.